Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Hope you're very well tonight. Hope you had a nice weekend. And what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about Rishi Sunak, it seems, because it seems to be the case that he has met with the 1922 committee, which could be the end of Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. Let me see who's on tonight before we begin. We have Jason. Great to see you, Jason. Amaxi is on. Great to see you too. We have Master Templar. Great to have you on. So according to Sam Coates of Sky News, Sunak has had an unscheduled one-to-one meeting with Sir Graham Brady. That can't be a nothing burger, surely. No, I think it's something quite serious, because something like this, the last time I think it happened was Liz Truss, and then was it a few days later Liz Truss resigned. So it could be the case that the Tories are looking to replace Rishi Sunak with who, I don't know, or with whom I should say. Into the God, great to see you. Hope you're well tonight. Stefan is here. Freckle Bunny, great to see you. Ava, good to have you on. Hope you're well. Aki's Mad, great to see you. Hope you're well up there in Scotland. Raven 1983 Witch is here. Great to see you. We also have Young Ralph. Great to see you, Young Ralph. Hope you're fine. We have Shell. Great to see you. We also have Woods Boy Hunter. Great to see you. Who else have we got on tonight? Killer, thank you for moderating tonight, Killer. Frederick, great to see you. We also have Pedulous, great to see you. Reagan Elite, hope you're well. Thanks for sharing the live stream. Make sure to check out Reagan Elite's YouTube channel. Give him a like and a subscribe. We also have CGM, great to see you. Hope you're well. Roshin is here. Artibus is here. Steve, great to see you. Who else have we got? Wim, Jim, Crazy Man is crazy. Oraman is here. Great to see you. Chatty Rat, hope you're well. Michael, great to see you. DW, Shane, Billy is on. We also have, go through as quickly as I can. Tube Driver, great to see you. Wolf Pet is on, good to see you, and so many more. Hope you're all very well. Hope you had a nice weekend and you're ready for another week of madness in British politics. it is mad. So let's see this report from Sky News.
I've discovered that last night Rishi Sunak had a private, secret meeting with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee. Now, there was always going to be a meeting with a slightly bigger group of people of Sir Graham Brady and his executive with the Prime Minister. That's normal and routine. But Graham Brady appears to have requested an additional one-on-one meeting that nobody else was present for on top of that. That is significant, Sophie, because when that happens, how can I put this? It often means something's up. Now, I can't tell you what was said in that meeting. I can't tell you any account of what's happening because nobody wants to go into detail. I just know that it was not on the schedule and people were surprised that it took place. The last equivalent meeting like that took place just before Liz Truss was dethroned, when Sir Graham Brady went to see Jeremy Hunt, who at that point was a pivotal figure in that administration, to warn him about what was happening. At that point, there seemed to be sufficient letters potentially going in for a vote of no confidence. There is chat about letters. There is a massive, massive list of things that Tory MPs are unhappy about, from the racism scandal that you've just been talking about, to the defection of Lee Anderson, to the poor handling of the budget, to the fact that Tories are 27 points behind in some of the polls, to the fact that they know that they're going to be getting a huge drubbing in the local elections. The question of when the election should be is still live because Number 10 haven't completely shut that down. There are problems everywhere you look. So when Graham Brady requests a secret meeting with Rishi Sunak, at least one eyebrow gets raised quite high.
Yeah.
So there's two ways this could go. First, it could go that Rishi Sunak gets removed and somebody replaces him. I don't know who. It could be Penny Mordaunt, or it could be Kemi Badenoch or Suella Braverman, somebody like that. Or it's possible that Rishi Sunak sees that the walls are closing in on him and he calls a general election. So I think what Sunak will do is, it's difficult because all of these things are happening at the same time and his time in office is getting more and more difficult. I still believe that he's going to call election later in the year, because I was going to do a video about this, but I can just say what I think now. Rishi Sunak, why is he Prime Minister? He's not there because he wants to improve the country. He's not there because he wants to represent his constituents. to fight on their behalf. He's there to enrich himself and his family and people like him. So, of course, he wants to stay there as long as possible. Now, this is something that's never brought up, I believe, in commentary about when the election will be. The point that's never brought up is Rishi Sunak himself. Rishi Sunak wants to stay there as long as possible. And you can see it with previous prime ministers. Boris Johnson held on for as long as possible. Liz Truss didn't last very long, but she tried to cling on for as long as she could. And Rishi Sunak is going to be the same. If Rishi Sunak believes he can stay there until November or maybe even January, he'll do that. But I think the problem for him is within the party. So Rishi Sunak would prefer to have the election in January because he can enrich himself all the way to January, another few months. The alternative, of course, is to have the general election straight away. This would be, I think this is what could happen. I don't think the Conservatives are going to replace Rishi Sunak and put somebody else there. Because, look, what would happen? Rishi Sunak would step down. This would be embarrassing for the party. They put somebody else in charge. Who? Kemi Badenoch, Suella Braverman, I don't know, Penny Mordaunt. These people are not going to change the chances of the Conservatives holding on to seats, because it's not so much Rishi Sunak is the problem, it's the party is the problem, it's the government that's the problem. The voters want change. So changing Rishi Sunak is not going to really help them at all. Now, I don't know whether the Conservatives believe this or know this, but I think it's a case of some of them believe, well, if we get rid of Rishi Sunak, it can boost our chances. We get a restart, the new candidate comes in, the new Prime Minister comes in, distracts the public for a bit, and that might help us. But I keep saying people are going to vote in the general election based on the cost of living crisis. What would a new Prime Minister do to resolve that? Nothing. So it doesn't matter who you have in charge. Yes, they'll get maybe a week or two, maybe even a month of a bit of a bounce, but that would dissipate pretty quickly because they're not going to actually change anything. So yes, you may see a new candidate come in, a new Prime Minister, they get a bit of a boost in the polls narrow somewhat, but then it would separate once again because, as I said, the vote will be based on the cost of living crisis. What have the Tories done over the last 14 years? Nothing to help people. So that's what they're going to get punished over. Not because Rishi Sunak's in charge, not because Kemi Badenoch's in charge, doesn't really matter. Sunak has 2 weeks to call a general election in May, Max. Yeah, so the time for a May election is running out. I still think he'll try and do it maybe in November. And this is because I think he wants to enrich himself and his family and his peers, people within the party, people outside the party, as much as he can before he leaves office. He wants to hold on to that role as long as possible. Maybe he likes being Prime Minister, but he likes the benefits of being Prime Minister, for sure. So, of course, he's not going to give up that easily. So I think if there's a May election, it will be because Rishi Sunak has been cornered and the pressure has been applied to him to do something. If he's removed, of course, this is the party deciding we want to have somebody else in charge, we want to give it another go, but it's not really going to help them. Because think about it, Penny Mordaunt is probably the best candidate to replace. I think if I was a Tory, I would be gunning for Penny Mordaunt. She's terrible, okay, but the list of candidates are pretty terrible anyway. So your chances of holding on to your seat if you're a Tory MP are probably slightly increased if Penny Mordaunt is in charge. But we don't know what she's like campaigning, because you need somebody who's good at campaigning. And the Tories are not going to do very well campaigning because they don't have a lot of money. You need a lot of money to do that. And after the May elections, for the local elections, you're going to have a lot of councillors gone. You're going to have a lot of groundwork gone. Volunteers. What's the point in volunteers coming out for the general election if they've got a bit of a battering in the locals? It's going to be a disaster. So once again, it doesn't matter who's put in charge. Mordaunt is the safest bet. Yeah, I think so. But it's not. But I can guarantee you, if they do this, we don't know if this is actually going to happen. But if they do replace Sunak with Mordaunt or somebody, that person will get a bit of a boost for a few weeks, but then it will disappear. in the same way that Rishi Sunak got a bit of a boost. People went, oh, who is this guy? People didn't really know who Rishi Sunak was. They knew he was the Chancellor. He was associated with the furlough scheme. People were happy about that. But now look at him. He's polling worse or on the same level as Liz Truss. Yes, a lot of time has passed, which may be in Penny Mordaunt or somebody else's favour. But at the end of the day, people are going to vote for the incumbent. For or against the incumbent. Are they happy with the Tories? 14 years of Tory rule? No. Doesn't matter if Rishi Sunak, Kemi Badenoch, Penny Mordaunt or Boris Johnson's in charge. 99% of general public only know Penny can hold us out. Excuse me, yes. That's all she's famous for. So the big story of today was, of course, the Tory donor Frank Hester. So who is Frank Hester and what did he reportedly say about Diane Abbott? So it seems that Diane Abbott is going to take this guy to court, trying to sue this guy. So businessman Frank Hester has been widely condemned after an emergence of comments he allegedly made about Diane Abbott. Hackney MP Miss Abbott has since responded, saying that the Tory donor's reported comments had put her in a frightening position. But who is Mr. Hester and what is he alleged to have said about Miss Abbott? So let's jump into this. So how he made his fortune: the 58-year-old healthcare entrepreneur is founder and chief executive of Phoenix Partnership, TPP. Based in Leeds, TPP describes itself as a leading global provider of healthcare technology. It says it provides vital clinical IT services in more than 2,600 GP practices. During the pandemic, it was reported that to have won a 6-figure contract to supply data on vaccine take-up levels. Why? Excuse me. Why did he win this contract? Is it anything to do with the money he has donated to the Conservative Party? Mr. Hester, who was awarded an OBE in 2015 for services to healthcare, made last year's Sunday Times rich list with an estimated fortune of £415 million. So he was awarded an OBE for services to healthcare, but he made a huge amount of money out of that. Generally we think of people who made, awarded for services to healthcare. We think of people who have actually invented something, a new vaccine or some sort of treatment, but not somebody who's made like almost £500 million out of it. Anyway, he was a computer programmer who he was a computer programmer when he founded TPP in 1997 and was listed as one of the top 50 innovators in the National Health Publication Health Service Journal in 2013. Huge donations to the Tories. So Mr. Hester donated £10 million to the Conservative Party, Tories last year, including a £5 million donation to Rishi Sunak that came from him personally, and another $5 million that came from his healthcare software firm in November, the Electoral Commission records show. So this guy, along with his company, have paid the Tories, donated, I should say, to the Tories £10 million. And he won a contract for, I don't know if it's written here, I think it was a £135 million contract with the NHS. His ties to the parties go back a long way. In 2013, he travelled to India with David Cameron and the then Prime Minister, as part of what was Britain's biggest ever trade delegation. This trip is worth a lot of money to us. It's invaluable, Mr. Hester reportedly told the Financial Times during the trip. Invaluable to whom? To the country or to him? Being with the Prime Minister and UK trade and investment means we see the right people. The following year, Jeremy Hunt, then Health Secretary, visited TPP's headquarters, saying technology is the key to 21st century personalised healthcare. So it is great to see companies like TPP leading the way with new software that will put care home residents in control of their health. So then we get to what happened with Miss Abbott, Diane Abbott. According to The Guardian, Mr. Hester made remarks about Miss Abbott in 2019 during a meeting at his Leeds company headquarters. In an article published on Monday, the publication reported he said, it's like trying to not be racist, but you see Diane Abbott on TV and you're just like, you just want to hate all black women because she's there. And I don't hate all black women at all, but I think she should be shot. So that's what he said. This is what a wonderful individual. This is the head of a company who provides healthcare to the state, to the government. A spokesperson for the entrepreneur released a statement saying Frank Hester accepts that he made rude comments about Diane Abbott in a private meeting several years ago. There's a statute of limitations on racist language and death threats, or close to death threats. But his criticism had nothing to do with her gender nor her color of skin. But that's what he said. The Guardian is right when it quotes Frank saying he abhors racism, but not least because he's experienced it as a child of Irish immigrants in the 1970s. Then he should have known better. You can't use my family were immigrants. You can't use that as an excuse, because that actually makes it worse, because then you should know better to make comments like that. It seems that Diane Abbott is going to take him to court over this. Now, will the Conservatives actually give back the money, the £10 million? Of course they won't. The money is not racist. This is just another embarrassment. It's only Tuesday and Rishi Sunak has had to deal with the embarrassment of Lee Anderson, a former deputy chair of the Conservative Party, defecting to Reform UK. And then now he has to condemn comments made by a donor of the Conservative Party, massive donor, mega donor, £10 million. It's not some guy down the street who donated 50 quid to the local Tory party. This is somebody who donated £10 million, £5 million of his own money to Rishi Sunak personally. But of course he got something in return, so quid quo pro. Paul, thank you so much. Paul of Scotland, thank you so much for that super chat. If people want change, it's unlikely they will have it with Labour. U-Turn's pledge to bash disabled, and the only thing that they could pretend is that they do not have the same name. I think there was I think I have it in my list of things we're going to cover tonight. Keir Starmer was interviewed about austerity, and the response was pretty poor, and we'll get to that later. Thanks so much for your support, Paul. Thanks for that super chat. In Scotland, if you want government to look after you, you need to vote for the SNP. I know that's doesn't go down well with some people, but that's the reality. Things like the baby box or making sure the bedroom tax, these things are covered by the Scottish government, while they're not in other parts of the UK. Alistair, thank you so much for that super chat. No, Max, you were right first time. Have 10 million. It's I keep saying if you donate to a political party, if you donate a significant amount, it sort of cancelled out a huge number of voters. Why should Rishi Sunak listen to voters when somebody can donate him £10 million? He's going to listen to them. He's not going to listen to voters. Why would he bother listening to voters? That's how politics works. That's why we need to get money out of politics. Political parties should be publicly funded. Or if you don't want to go down that road, there was an idea brought in by a candidate in 2016 who ran on a ticket of a UBI. He was talking about democracy dollars, where every citizen would receive a certain amount of money, like maybe $10, $15, £10 or £15, and they could only use this money to donate to a political party. So it would level the playing field. You look at, for example, the Conservative Party, they rely on big donors. Well, it's very difficult, for example, the Green Party to compete with them. But if hundreds of thousands of people who support the Green Party received their money to donate to the Green Party, this would really help the party. So it would level the playing field a great deal. But you need to get rid of these big donors. It completely corrupts politics. I understand there are certain donors who want to help a political party to keep another one out or on a particular issue, but this is the minority. Most big donors want something in return. Frank Hester is an anagram of ferrets. Well said, Andrew. How long did that take? Well done. Thanks, Alistair. Thanks, Andrew. My favorite Tory anagram was Virginia Bottomley. I'm an evil Tory bigot. We need to do a website on those. Need to get something going. So let's a bit more on this.
Party donor, admittedly okay in private, whatever, but saying that it made him feel that Diane Abbott should be shot. And there have been people today who have accused the Tory donor, Mr. Hester, of putting a target on her back. This is serious, serious stuff. Now, of course, this has, as I say, been dominating the news agenda all day. Earlier on today, the Work and Pensions Secretary, Mal Stride, echoed the position that the Prime Minister's spokesperson has said, and this is the really weird thing, in refusing to say whether these comments were racist.
Well, it's clear that what he said was inappropriate.
Inappropriate. So racism is now inappropriate. And this is a time when Rishi Sunak wants to clamp down on extremists. Extreme parties. Does he include certain political donors to his political party in that group of extremists? Paul, thanks so much for that super chat once again. Very kind of you, Paul. Before we get to Paul, we have Lloyd. Make sure I didn't miss anyone else. Just go quickly. Okay. Lloyd, thank you so much for that super chat. Politicians are role models. When they refuse to recognize racism, it lowers the standards of what racism is acceptable by the public. Very well said. Yeah, because if politicians are able to get away with lying, then it sort of diminishes what the negativity, the toxicness of lying. If they're able to get away with racism, then it as you said, it diminishes it reduces what the impact of what racism is. As you said, it lowers the standards that we apply to others. And I think a lot of this comes from Brexit, unfortunately. Brexit sort of gave people a license to be racist, gave people a license to be xenophobic. The things people wouldn't say before. Well, now, because of Brexit, where, we voted to leave the European Union, to send all these people back home. And I think a lot of the comments you've seen online and social media, but also in the public when it came to foreigners and asylum seekers in general, foreigners in general, it became very toxic. And it used to be on a certain level. It used to be a sort of fringe, far-right sort of rhetoric, but it became mainstream under the Conservative Party, and it found its way into the Houses of Commons. With Suella Braverman and her invasion rhetoric. Paul, thanks so much once again. Thanks, Paul. Note the donations from private health companies to Labour. I have no doubt that Labour will oblige to further privatisation of the NHS. In England, you can vote Green. Wes Streeting has said in the past that he says we need to rely on the private sector. The private sector and the public sector need to work together. Now, look, I'm an advocate of the NHS. I think the NHS, right up to the time the Tories were taking over from Labour, the NHS was the gold standard around the world. Countries around the world were envious of what the NHS was and what it represented. Since then, over those 14 years, it has been turned on its head. The approval rating of the NHS is through the floor. And that's because of what the Tories have done to it. Now, there are other healthcare systems around the world, in Europe as well, where you have public-private partnerships. Now, the difference, public-private, I prefer a fully funded public healthcare system. I don't believe that we should have healthcare systems that rely on the private sector, because the private sector are profit-driven, and of course they're not going to be customer. Why do you use the word customer? Patient-driven. So a healthcare system should be patient-driven, not profit-driven. But if you're going to have the private sector involved, it has to be transparent, and it has to be in a way that benefits the public service. But I think when it comes to the Conservatives, and I'm afraid also the Labour Party, you have private companies making massive donations to both political parties, and also outside the European Union, it's easier to get round these levels of corruption safeguards. As part of the European Union, there are very strict, especially if it's related to EU funding. There are very strict safeguards in place to defend against corruption, to clamp down on corruption. But because the UK is outside the European Union, outside that framework, unfortunately, I think certain healthcare providers, the private healthcare companies, understand now it's our chance to make a mint here. We're able to we're able to force the NHS to use our services, and we can bribe politicians to force the NHS to use our services, which I don't think is possible to the same extent in the European Union, unfortunately. So this is another benefit of Brexit, not for the people, but for these private companies. Thanks, Paul. Woofpet, child payment of £25 a week. Lefters, 10,000 kids out of pocket, very max, and a lot more besides. So the child payment of £25 a week helps so many people in Scotland, and then it's not in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as far as I know. In England, in particular, it's not there. So people are worse off in England because they don't have an SNP government, and you know what Labour and the Conservatives will do will be criticise the SNP politically, but they won't criticise their policies because they can't criticise their policies. The Tories will say it's a waste of money, but Labour can't criticise them because they're progressive policies that many people who vote Labour in England would support. Thanks, guys.
As I understand it, apologise for those remarks. I think the critical point here is I don't think what he was saying was a gender-based or a race-based comment, but it was clearly inappropriate. He has apologised, and I think we need to move on from that.
We need to move on. See, look, he made his political. He made a mistake, and he apologised. And we don't really think it's racist. It was taken out of context. We don't know the full context. We can't put him in prison without having a trial. So let's just move on from all of this. And let's not focus on other donors because that could be embarrassing too. So let's just forget about donors altogether and let's focus on the people's priority, which is, of course, stopping the boats.
Not racist. He's talking about the idea that Diane Abbott should be shot. It made him want to hate all black women. And we've got to a position in 2024 in British politics where a sitting cabinet minister, and indeed the Prime Minister's own spokesperson, won't say that those comments were racist. Now, of course, Mr. Hester...
because he's a donor. That's why he won't say it's racist. Now, later on in the day, Kemi Badenoch came out and sort of said it was racist, but nobody's demanding that that the money be returned to him. Nobody said, look, these comments were racist. We want to distance ourselves from this donor. We don't endorse this donor at all. This donor shouldn't be giving us money because we don't want money from racists. Here is the money back. No, nobody has said that yet. And I don't think they are going to say it. We've become a country of racism, bigotry, and recycled homophobia. Why? Because we let shits like I don't like my Polish neighbour and the trans agenda regarding the trope slide without challenge. Yes, unfortunately, these things have gone unchallenged. And I think the reason why they've gone unchallenged is because of social media. Because unfortunately, this type of racism, bigotry, and homophobia and transphobia has generated revenue for people, grifters. If I were to, I can guarantee you, if I were to flip tomorrow and I was to start saying that Brexit was wonderful and there are too many foreigners and trans rights need to be encroached upon and stuff like this, I can guarantee you I would be getting a job on GB News or Talk TV within a week. Because this is what drives revenue for these people. It's a grift. It's a way of making money. And they don't care about the consequences. They don't care about the impact on ordinary people. And this is the problem with social. There was a time when, in traditional media, you had the news and then you had opinion separate. Now opinion is the news. And everyone has an opinion, and whose opinion is more extreme gets more attention. The empty can makes the most noise. And this is really worrying, because what it does is it legitimizes positions, falsely, of course, legitimizes positions that used to be extreme. They have become mainstream. As I said at the beginning, this type of racism, bigotry and everything, this used to be on the fringe. It used to be, look at the Conservative Party. The type of language you're hearing from the Conservative Party, Suella Braverman, Lee Anderson, this is the sort of rhetoric you'd hear from somebody, with a megaphone from the BNP 20 years ago. This isn't something you expect from a mainstream party, the Conservative Party. They have always been a nasty party, but their nastiness was sort of at a general group of people, faceless people, but it was never so specific. And it's become extremely specific over the last number of years. And I think a lot of it, the Brexit was the dam that broke, and it licensed this sort of rhetoric. But of course, it's been fed also by social media, I think. Thanks, Gareth. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Thanks so much for that.
Has apologised for them. And actually, I would be the first person to say that in a democracy, we should give credit to someone for apologising and admitting when they've got it wrong. But
he has apologised, but he has not said it was racist. That's the problem. He said, yeah, I'm sorry. It's a sort of, I'm sorry if you're offended type of apology. He hasn't actually apologised and said, I'm sorry for my comments. My comments were racist, and I'm sorry for the offence that those comments have made. I was wrong to make those comments. They were stupid comments, and I apologise to Diane, Abbott, and anyone who has and anyone I have offended with those comments, and the pain that I have caused with those comments. That's what he should have said. And I'm going to ask the Conservative Party to give the money back. But no, it's I'm sorry if you were offended type of apology. He hasn't apologised for the racism.
And that is an important part of the idea of forgiveness. It's something that's lost too often in the censorious nature of our politics, which is just so quick to condemn. But the point is, that's fine. And William Hague has said we should give him some credit for apologising. That's fine. As long as you recognise how you were wrong in the first place and say that what you said, maybe you didn't mean it that way, whatever it happens to be, but you can understand that many people will consider it to be racist and it would upset and offend a lot of people. Now, Mr. Hester has not done that. He's not accepted that it has been racist, and indeed he has been confirmed in that by everything that the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers have said. I do wonder if a Labour donor had said...
Look, Andrew, thanks so much for that. Frank Hester's anagram for fuck hit her arse.
Something equivalent about anti-Semitism and someone of the Jewish faith and ethnicity. Don't we think that the very first people rushing to condemn it would be the Prime Minister and senior cabinet ministers, right?
Can you imagine, yeah, or can you imagine if Jeremy Corbyn had said something like this? What do you think would happen? Or can you imagine the chief of a trade union? So it's a better example, better analogy. The Mick Lynch isn't affiliated with the Labour Party, but let's say for the sake of argument, the RMT is affiliated with the Labour Party. Mick Lynch had made some anti-Semitic remarks. What do you think the Tory party would say? What do you think they would be doing? They would be demanding that Mick Lynch would be sacked. They would demand that any money that the RMT had given to the Labour Party be returned. And there'd be an investigation carried out on who received the money, what the money was spent on, stuff like that. I can guarantee you. But because it's their side and the footballification is in full swing here, it's like, well, let's just move on from all of this. He apologized. It's, we don't know what he apologized for, but he apologized, and let's move on. Wolfpack, thank you so much for that super chat. No man or woman can serve two masters. Either it's the constituents or donors, investors. Choose your MP while. Exactly. Well said, Wolfpack. I keep trying to get this message, and you put it across much better than I could. You can't serve two masters. It's either your constituents or it's your donors, your investors. So who is it? obviously for Rishi Sunak, I believe he's there just to enrich himself and his donors, to enrich people like himself. He doesn't care about his constituents. He doesn't care about Britain. He sees it as a vehicle. And that's why I keep coming back to this idea that I don't believe Rishi Sunak wants to have a general election immediately. He wants to have it as late as possible. Ideally for him, it would be in January next year, because then he can fill his pockets before he goes out the door. So whether the election will take place then, I don't know. The party might push him in that direction, because at the end of the day, he is the one who will decide. But the pressure can be applied to him within the party, because if he doesn't call the election and the Tory party feel that they're going to lose, or they're going to lose out even worse, in a worse way, what they'll do is they'll remove him. But it would be wonderful if they decide to remove him and he goes, fuck you, and calls a general election. This would be throwing his party under the bus. And he'd have nothing to lose, because he would lose his seat anyway. It's likely he'll lose his seat. Even if he does hold on to his seat, it's pointless, because he's a lame duck. He has no power anymore. He has no influence. But I think this could be the threat he can pull. He can push back at the Conservatives. If the Conservatives say, look, you're damaging the brand, you have to go, then he can say, well, if I'm going to call a general election. But then this is Rishi Sunak. He's extremely spineless, so he may just go. Anyway.
Rightly so. But it may...
Anyway, let's move on from that. Actually, it's about halfway through the live stream, guys, so I'll just take a short comedy moment and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you enjoy this.
I can't hide my contempt for Lee Anderson, so I'm not even going to try. But at this point, the guy's been in more parties than Keith Richards. And like loads of people who say they're not racist, he continually finds new euphemisms to sound a little bit racist, like, I just want my country back. Which, when you drill down, just means he wants to go back to a time when every single person in this country was a pasty-faced uber gammon just like him, and stuff like bigotry and domestic violence were on the school curriculum. And he says he's been soul-searching and on a political journey. The Tories kicked you out, pal. You didn't choose to join the Reform Party until you had nowhere else to go. When my wife ran off with my best friend, I decided to leave her. Yeah, alright, pal. And soul searching. If your soul is as outdated as your worldview, it's probably wearing double denim. He says he speaks for the country. Well, you don't speak for me, pal. And you don't speak for most of the people watching this video. And according to some pretty robust poll numbers, you do not speak for this country, who at some point this year are about to give people with views like yours a giant middle finger the size of one of those Toblerones you can only get in airports. I can't hide.
I love that. Oh, yes. Wonderful. So, back to Rishi Sunak's problems. Rishi Sunak holds private meeting with chair of influential 1922 committee, chair backbencher, with chair committee of backbench MPs amid concerns over party's direction. So the Prime Minister saw Sir Graham Brady on Monday night on the margin of a scheduled 1922 executive meeting. It comes amid concerns from growing... I wonder if the Conservatives get completely destroyed and they end up with like five MPs. Will they still have a 1922 committee? Because it'd be like, what's the point in having a committee when we don't even have enough MPs? Anyway, it could be like the 1922 committee from 1922 to 2024. Anyway, it comes amid concerns from growing numbers of MPs at the direction of the Tory party. One source said that they had heard senior backbenchers want to see Sir Graham over the weekend to express their views. Number 10 and Sir Graham have been contacted, but neither commented on the meeting. However, a source confirmed the fact of the meeting told Sky News that the pair met briefly. Sir Graham, the long-time chair of the committee, can hold meetings with the Prime Minister and top government officials on important moments in their premiership. He met Jeremy Hunt, the newly appointed Chancellor, in October 2022 in the final weeks of Liz Truss's premiership. Sir Graham will know how many letters of no confidence have been submitted and how close a vote in the Prime Minister's leadership is to be triggered. In the light of defection of Lee Anderson to Reform, the row over donors who reported language about Diane Abbott, the lacklustre response of the budget, and the continued massive poll deficit, Tory MPs are increasingly anxious about the direction of the party. Allies of Sunak said 30 to 40 Conservative MPs want an election in May. They say this is a different group to the troublemakers. They added only 2% of... They added there was only a 2% chance of an election, and that key campaign figures had booked holidays over Easter. So it's unlikely that there's going to be a May election. Although, this could be... Once again, this could change if Rishi Sunak feels that he's going to be pushed out. And once again, Rishi Sunak, it depends on whether Rishi Sunak is spineless or spiteful. Which is more powerful? Which emotion is more powerful? His spinelessness or his, a strong spine, a strong spineless character? Which is stronger, the spinelessness or the... now I've lost my train of thought because I'm looking at Gareth's comment. Thanks so much, Gareth. Imagine it, folks. When I see Netanyahu, it makes me want to hate all Jews, or I want to see Netanyahu shot. Imagine the Tory outcry, for fuck's sake. Yeah, so if this was a comment that was posted, if this was something said by members of the public or a Labour Party donor, can you imagine what the response would be? Sunak has a spine? No, he has no spine. Sorry, spitefulness or spine. If he was like Boris Johnson, who is extremely spiteful, then he would call a general election. If he's like, Rishi Sunak himself, then he'll just, okay, I'll go away. So I think him in a nutshell, spineless or spiteful. Thanks for that, Andrew. Thanks, Gareth. So it depends on a number of factors. It depends on the feeling within the Conservative Party, whether they can get Rishi Sunak out. It depends on Rishi Sunak's ability to stand up to his party. And I think it depends on the feeling within the Conservative Party if they think things can improve between now and November. Because it's looking likely to be a November election. I don't see it happening in May because there are too many things working against the Tories at the moment. And I think if I was in the Conservative Party, if I was an MP, okay, I'd prefer to stay in my seat as long as possible because something could happen between now and November that could boost our chances. I prefer, because I need to pay bills. If you lose your seat, you end up losing your money as well. And you may not have a job lined up. Some of them may have jobs lined up, so they don't care. But it's likely that many of them don't. And they'll have to go back to doing what they did before. So they prefer to postpone that for as long as possible. So I'm of the idea, more and more, I'm of the idea that an election will take place in November. But as I said, if Rishi Sunak is pushed, he may be pushed into a corner and he may decide, to hell with this, I'm pulling the lever now and we're going to have a general election. Because anti-Semitism tops the racist hierarchy, was it, Gareth? Yes. So different forms of racism have different values, it seems. Staying with problems for the Conservatives, more Tory MPs in talks to defect, Reform UK leader hints. So what do we believe Richard Tice? I'm not sure if
Special day for us. Our first MP will be taking his seat in the House of Commons this morning.
Well, indeed, and we all watched and covered the announcement of the switch yesterday. My first question now is whether you think it's the first of many that are going to come across. How many conversations are you in the middle of having?
There are conversations going on. We're not going to give any details of those. I don't give a running commentary. They can be assured that discussions...
I hate this term that he keeps using, a running commentary. I'm not going to give a running commentary. Look, we don't know. There's no point asking him this question because he never answers the question. And I don't really expect him to answer the question because if he says, well, we have 10 MPs who are willing to defect, then it'll be like, okay, who are these 10 MPs? And then if it turns out there's one of them defects, then it'll be regarded as a failure. If he says one has defected and then it's actually 10, then it'd be like, okay, well then why did you tell us only one when it's actually more than that? And it could also be smoke and mirrors. There could be nobody actually talking about defecting. I think there are a few candidates, extremely crazy people within the Conservative Party who are absolutely destined to lose their seats, may decide, well, if Reform UK are willing to give away lots of money, then I'll defect to Reform UK, because I care about myself before the party, before country, before constituents. So remember, these people are charlatans, liars, crooks, and narcissists, a lot of them. The ones in the Nazi party wing of the Conservative Party. Was it the National Conservatives or New Conservatives, whatever you call them? The far right within the Conservative Party. These are people who don't care about their constituents, they care about themselves. And they'd be very happy to defect to the Conservative Party or defecate. I think it was Count Bin Face posted on Twitter. Lee Anderson has defecated to Reform UK. Leaky Lee. Suella, no, I don't think Suella would defect, because she'd definitely lose her seat. No, we're talking about Tory MPs who are guaranteed to lose their seat, who have nothing really to lose, but make a bit of money, because Reform UK have very rich donors, it seems, and Reform UK are not going to really benefit from having Lee Anderson, but it will give the party a bit of a boost in name. So it will boost their name, but it won't actually make any real difference to them getting policies through or anything. But that's not what they're about. I keep saying it's about moving the needle further to the right, about shifting the Conservative rhetoric to the right, moving the party to the right economically. They don't care about wokeness. They don't care about immigration. They don't care about culture wars. They don't really care about Brexit. These are all things that they can use, vehicles, in order to convince the public to vote for parties that represent right-wing economic policies, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. The people donating to the Conservative Party or Reform UK are about economic policies, right-wing economic policies like low taxation, low regulations, fewer protections for workers, for the environment, for consumers. That's what they're about. So for them, it's an investment. And they say, look, but you bring this about by any means necessary. If you have to make racist comments on social media, if we have to set up a channel, a TV channel to pump this sort of rhetoric out 24/7, we'll do that. This is all about return on investment. You invest a few £1 million in Reform UK and they're able to move the narrative further to the right. That's going to come back to you in spades. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Tice not giving running commentary. Next joke. Yes, well said. This will affect all requests for extradition from the UK, from the EU to the UK. We haven't been following that. They're paying it forward. Paul of Scotland, can you do that? Old penny with face wouldn't be happy. Didn't understand that either. So I need to follow the stream more carefully. Moving on. This is prisons to be full by Easter after plans to release offenders up to 2 months earlier revealed. So the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, has said new measures will radically change the way that government deals with foreign national offenders in order to free up space in prisons. So what the Tories have been doing over the last while is, recently in particular, they have said that they want to jail more extremists. They want to introduce new legislation to clamp down on extremists. So this means putting more extreme people into prison. But the prisons are full. So how are you going to put more people into prison if the prisons are full? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to let people out of prison earlier. This sounds a bit like, remember back just after Brexit when they said what we're going to do is make the heavy goods vehicle licenses easier to do. The tests will make them easier so more people can pass the test. And, reversing, who needs to reverse an articulated truck? When do you ever need to reverse an articulated truck? So what you can do is you can just pass the exam in an easier way. And the same with prison. Well, instead of sending people to prison for a long time, let's send people to a prison for a shorter time. That means more people are out and we have more space available. Oh, sorry, Paul, I missed your super chat. Hey, I see it now. Lee should be called 1p Lee, like the coin, two-faced and no value. Well said. Yeah. Who wants 1p's anymore? Nobody. You can do nothing with a 1p. Just like Lee Anderson, completely useless. Thanks for that, Paul. Sorry I missed it before. Thanks, Paul. I saw it now, Killer. I saw it. It comes as the Justice Secretary Alex Chalk announced measures that will target reductions in the number of foreign national offenders in UK prisons. There are currently around 10,000 such offenders in the system. So this is a bit of smoke and mirrors. What we're doing is, the Tories are trying to do is, what we'll do is we're going to get rid of all these foreign national offenders to free up prisons. But in reality, it's about changing the law to release a lot of other people as well. Now, this is a time when people are supposed to be, when the government are supposed to be cracking down on crime, especially crime against women and girls. That's what they said that they were going to do. But the amount of convictions is extremely low. And what are they going to do? Send whatever people they do convict, they're sent to prison for a shorter time. What sort of message does that send to people? If you want to jail more people, build more prisons. Yes, but the Tories don't want to build prisons unless it's there's money to be made in it for their donors, and also building prisons are not popular with the public. This is the thing. They're necessary. If you want to have a civilized society, you need to have prisons or some sort of criminal justice system. See, there is also this problem. As we move further to the right, as the Conservatives and Reform UK push the public opinions further to the right, you get this response, for example, when it comes to criminal justice. Well, people need to be punished, not rehabilitated. Like, the vast majority of people in prison are for non-violent crimes. So it doesn't make economic sense to keep these people locked up. Also, for people who are not going to reoffend, and I'm once again not talking about serial killers, people like that. I'm just talking about people who are, who are in for non-violent crimes. A lot of these people could be doing something else, like community service. It costs a huge amount of money to keep people in prison, and there's very little return on that. So it makes more sense maybe to have people do work in the community, to do some sort of training. In many cases, if some of the crimes are related to poverty, well, it would actually be cheaper just to give people more money so they don't get involved in crime. But we can't think of that because crime has to be punished in some way, and prisons need to be places to punish people. But nobody wants a prison in their back door and their backyard. So it's very difficult to build the prisons, and they're expensive to build and they're expensive to run, and it's very difficult to justify that sort of capital expenditure, because people will say, well, why are you building prisons and not hospitals? So I think politically it's very difficult to invest in prisons because the public don't want to see that money invested. They would prefer to see hospitals. But as a society, we need to invest in these things or in some viable alternative. But once again, we can't have viable alternatives because people want some sort of vengeance. And the public have been convinced. There's no staff either. Well said, Mike. Yes. Once again, thank you to Brexit. Who wants to be a prison officer if you can get the same money working in Lidl? And then you can work in Lidl because before, the people working in Lidl were probably European nationals. Those European nationals are no longer around, so there are jobs available in Lidl where you can, the worst sort of problems you have in Lidl is maybe a few drunken teenagers who are trying to sneak out with a bottle of whiskey under their arm or something. That's probably the worst thing you're going to encounter. But would anyone really want to compare a job in a supermarket with, for example, working in a prison? I would not like to work in a prison, and the paying conditions in the prison system are pretty poor. So it's very difficult to get the people, even if there are lots of people available because of the paying conditions. And if you want to increase the paying conditions, well, then this is going to create a bigger problem for the justice system because they need more money. So once again, a lot of these problems stem from the Tories not wanting to invest in public services. I wouldn't be in a prison. I wouldn't be able to be a prison officer. A lot of people, yes, it's a very difficult job. And unfortunately, a lot of the jobs are not just about like the skills, the general skills we imagine to go with them, but also a lot of soft skills, a lot of other skills that are required. I think unfortunately we look at popular culture and we think this is what prison officers are like, but a lot of them are dealing with also mental health issues that they don't have the training for. What money will they employ at a decent rate? People working in prison? I don't know. Glad you're talking about this, Max. No, this is something that needs to be talked about. Unfortunately, if we want to have a society where we rehabilitate people, keep people out of, keep them out of society, we need to build these prisons. It's a cost. But unfortunately, politicians don't want to talk about it. So it says here, revealed the bumper profits taken by English private nursery chains. So there isn't sufficient healthcare, there isn't also sufficient childcare, but some people are making lots of money, it seems. Campaigners are calling for tougher regulations of the childcare market to safeguard taxpayers' money, as new analysis shows that more than £1 in every £5 spent at English nurseries backed by large investment companies ends up as a profit. So this is a bit like housing. So there probably was a time when you could rely on some sort of public, the council, for example, would provide some sort of childcare. I don't know if that was the case in England, but I don't know about other parts of the UK, but imagine a situation, a bit like housing. You used to be able to rely on the public sector, so the state or local government. But because that's gone now, somebody has to fill the gap, and who fills the gap is the private sector. And of course, the private sector is driven by profit. So they're going to jack up prices, and if certain people are not able to afford those services, well then the state have to step in and help people. So look, for example, if it's providing people with support to pay their rent to a private landlord, or provide health care, well, some of that money goes to the private sector. Or when it comes to childcare, the councils have to help poorer families get access to childcare, but that's something that's coming out of the taxpayer's pocket, or the council payer's pocket, and is going into the private sector's pocket. Jeremy Hunt announced an extra £500 million funding in last week's budget to help promote his promise of 30 hours a week of free childcare for under 3s by September next year, which he hopes to bring 60,000 parents back to work. So this is his plan. Of course, it's full of holes, but this is his plan. £500 million to provide 30 free hours of childcare for under 3s by September. Now, is the staff available? No. Is £500 million enough? We don't know. Will it bring back 60,000 parents back into the workplace? Probably not. But it's a nice big figure that you can use to promote yourself. With public funding for the sector set to surge, research by The Guardian and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, in collaboration with investigative accounting firm Trinova Consulting, reveals that private chains are poised to make bumper profits even as small providers struggle to survive. The analysis shows nurseries backed by investment companies. My God, investment companies. This is a separate issue, but in Ireland a big problem at the moment is housing. And a lot of housing has been bought up by investment companies. They're nicknamed vulture funds. So these are private equity companies that are able to outbid ordinary people who want to buy a home. And there's no real regulation, no government regulation against this. So imagine you go to buy a house. You've eventually, in Ireland, which is extremely difficult, but you manage to put aside enough money to get a mortgage. You find the home, your dream home. You see the cost price. You try to negotiate a price with the owner. Everything is fine, and then at the last minute you receive an email or a phone call to say, sorry, somebody else has outbid you. It was a private company, an investment firm. And this is happening right across Ireland, and it's a massive problem for a lot of, for example, first-time buyers. I don't know if this is happening in the UK, but it is a serious problem in Ireland, and and of course it's not being clamped down on because politicians, well, what's the problem? The problem is always the same. Politicians are receiving donations from these companies, or they have investments themselves in these companies, and they're making massive profits, so there's no incentive for them to do anything about it. Anyway, including private equity firms, asset managers, and international pension funds reported double their profits over private providers and 7 times those of non-profits. Joseph Rowntree Foundation said the findings underline the need for stricter controls on the sector. In a report, doesn't Rishi Sunak's wife own one of these, or doesn't she have a share in some of these private healthcare funds? So good luck with that happening. Good luck with that changing. In a new report, the anti-poverty think tank calls for social licensing of childcare providers. This would demand commitments on workers' pay and the value of money these from nursery chains, potentially including a profits cap. Firms in receipt of public funding would also be expected to be financially transparent. This is once again a problem in post-Brexit Britain, where in the European Union there are controls like this. Because Britain is no longer a member of the European Union, the Tories are able to strip away any sort of calls for transparency. And we're seeing it all the time. These shadowy companies set up overnight, given massive contracts, and there's no way of getting that money back. Now, the Labour Party has said that they're going to try and claw back some of this money, but I don't know whether they can do it legally or not. Firms in receipt of the public funds would also be expected to be financially transparent. Abhi Judarinda, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation's principal policy advisor on care, said our childcare system is a wild west where the biggest providers cash in while others struggle and workers live on poverty pay. Pouring billions into it without proper controls is utterly irresponsible. The companies backed by private equity or investment firms covered by the analysis, which represents some of England's largest childcare providers, reported average profits equivalent to 22% of their turnover over the 5-year period from 2018 to 2022. So it's a booming business. More and more young people who have children, if they can afford to have children, are of course having to work in order to have childcare, because if they don't work, did I hear Dylan again? Yes, you did. If they stay at home, then they're not going to be able to afford to pay the bills, the mortgage, whatever, the rent, mortgage, bills, whatever. If they work, well, then they need somebody to look after the children or the child. So they need to rely on a private healthcare provider generally, because the alternative is a charity. There may not be a charity in your area, or you may not qualify for a charity. Maybe you're just over the threshold. This is the dilemma. See, there was a time, it seems eons ago, where, in a family, if you had, a couple with a child or 2 children, one of them could work and the other could stay at home. This was sort of normal. They could afford to buy a house, or rent was affordable, that it wasn't something that people had to worry about. Yeah, you had to pay the rent at the end of every month, whatever, or every 2 weeks, whatever it was, but it was not something that people were really all that concerned about. Now everything is a massive cost that people are staying up with, losing sleep over. Family members are childcare providers here in the US. So this is a way around it, and it's similar in Italy, in some southern European countries in particular, where grandparents are childcare providers, or the parents of or relatives are childcare providers. but this isn't something that everyone can rely upon. Just a few things for you to look at on Checkout Max. Anthony, thanks for that. Cahill, thank you so much. That's super chat. Did you see the hammering the Irish government got on the family and care referendums last week, supported by most parties? Yes. So let me just. I hadn't planned to talk about this, but this was really. This was a very interesting story. So I didn't understand what the hell. So okay, I'll try and give as much brief context to this as possible. Although I'm not an expert on the area, because I really didn't understand what the hell was going on. So the Irish government decided to change the constitution, change references to mothers, I believe it was, in the reference to mothers in the Irish constitution. Now, in Ireland, to change the constitution, you need to have a referendum. And there were 2 referenda last week. And the wording was to make it more gender neutral, I believe. Now, the government, all the main political parties campaigned on a yes vote, and well, it failed. And I think it failed because I didn't understand exactly what not so much about the language, but the motivation behind the language. So it wasn't very, I didn't fully understand why they wanted to change it. Like, changing the language isn't going to change the reality, because I think it's related to carers, where the language was changed to the type of carer, but there was also word, thanks Cal, there was also a reference to how changing the language means that the state is not obliged to help people. And this was deeply concerning. So if the state has an obligation to support people, support carers, that's one thing. If you change the language to take that out, and then the state is no longer obliged to do something, then of course people are worse off. So I'm so sorry that I'm not able to respond to this better, but I didn't really understand. I had reached out to some people on social media about this, trying to understand, okay, what is this vote about, and why did they want to change the language? And the only information I could find was, well, because the language is not very inclusive. Okay, but does it actually help people? Is it actually going to make any real difference? And all of the political parties really, they backed it, and it failed. And it didn't just fail like, a bit like Brexit. No, it was overwhelmingly no. Turnout was extremely low as well. So the government really ended up with egg on their face, and the political parties. But I think some of the opposition parties, Sinn Féin, for example, in particular, they backed a yes vote. It failed, but they probably came out okay out of this because it's nothing to do with us. It was the government. They ran a bad campaign, so it's not our fault. Luckily, Ireland has a written constitution. That's one thing. Yes, it's good to have a written, because then you can point to it. Otherwise, you can't, and you have to sort of hope that the government will look after you, which the Tories are not doing. Anyway, guys, I want to I'm a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to cover the last few things really quickly. What the hell is happening with Kate? So this is a really...
We're now joined by photojournalist Joel Goodman, who took that fabulous picture in Manchester on New Year's Eve, where there was so much going on. And
it's art. That's not a picture. That is art. Look at the guy reaching out for his pint as he lies in the middle of the road. Somebody being harassed or taken down by the police, and their girlfriend or fiance or whatever is looking on in disbelief.
This tableau of kind of different bits of chaos on a night out. Look, what is the problem with the photo having been photoshopped when, as the princess says, it's what a lot of people do, and she mucked around with photoshopping as well?
It's not about her mucking about with it. It's like there's something it's dishonesty. Like, it's different if it was touched up, but it's the context here. The context is she went into hospital and she had not been seen since. It's different if this was like a normal photo that she appeared all the time, and her the color in her cheeks was brought up, or the lighting was modified to make it a bit more brighter, or something like that. This is not what's happening here. The problem is that people believe that she's not alive, that she's no longer living, that she has disappeared, that she is in hiding, that she has been kidnapped. Like, this is insane. Roisin, thanks so much for that super chat. Default position regarding referendums when you're not sure is to vote no. Sinn Féin didn't like the wording. So this is, I remember a friend of mine always said, if you're in doubt, vote no. So don't vote for change if you're in doubt when it comes to the referendum. Many people will point to the Lisbon Treaty many years ago, and where the Irish people were not very convinced, so they voted no in that referendum. It was sent back, renegotiated, improved upon, run again, and the people voted yes. Now, Brexiteers will say, oh, this is the people were tricked into... No. The people didn't like the first one. It was changed. It was improved upon. And people voted the second time, and they voted yes. So if you want... that's the way Brexit should have been. People didn't know what they were voting for the first time. In the case of... When it came to Brexit, it should have been, do you want to leave the European Union, yes or no? Not vote, leave, or remain. Remain would have been the default. It should have been, not leaving being the default. Max confirmed Kate is indeed dead. No, I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. It's just, it's insane. Her saying that, people saying that she photoshopped. Why doesn't she just come out? Make a video. She can do it. She has a phone, okay? I'm sure she has quite a few followers on social media. She can just go, look, guys, sorry I messed up. Here I am. Hold up a paper from today to show that she's still with us. No. Guys, I'm also at the end of the stream. I just want to cover one final story before we go. No, this one, because it's going to... This has not gone down very well.
Last week's budget made it very clear that from next year we're going to see some really savage cuts to public spending. Really savage cuts. And I feel that you haven't really been honest with the British people yet about what you're going to do about that. Are you going to tax more, borrow more, or you're going to become, the austerity Prime Minister? What are you going to do?
Let's be honest about what we're going to inherit, because I think it starts there. Because what we learned last week was a terrible indictment on 14 years in power. 14 years of Tory government.
Look, I haven't got long, so I just want to know. We know how bad it is. We know how bad it is. I want you to be honest with people. What are you going to do? Are you going to become the austerity Prime Minister if you win the election?
Be an awful inheritance. If we're privileged enough to come into power, they've damaged the economy, they've damaged our public services, and we have to change that. I ran a public service, so I don't need anybody to tell me how important it is that our public services are properly supported and properly funded. We have to ensure that we've got an economy that is thriving, because at the bottom of all of this is the fact the economy's been stagnant for 14 years.
I know you want to grow the economy, so but that's not going to happen on day one. I want Sheffield Wednesday to win the Premier League. I know it's not going to happen this season.
But there's a lot of things we can do very quickly. Changing the planning regulations and rules can be done very...
Changing planning regulation is not going to change. You can do that from day one, but it's not going to make any difference. Why won't he say no? Because the reason he won't answer questions is because he has a majority, a big lead in the polls. And he's been told by people, don't upset that lead. Don't say anything. Because if you don't say anything, you can't be held to account on anything. So if he comes out and says something, this is politicking, unfortunately. This is how politics works. If he comes out and he says, we're going to spend this money, then the day after, and this is not a defense, I think I would prefer politicians to be honest. I would prefer him to say something like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to introduce a wealth tax. There's so many people in Britain who are not paying money, they're paying taxes. They're not shouldering the burden. The country is a disaster. The Tories have left us a disaster. We have to claw some of that money back. One way of achieving that would be a wealth tax. Now, if he were to do that, that would be a wonderful thing. It could bring in between 100 and 150 billion pounds in 1 year. If he were to do that, the Tory media would turn on him. The Tories would turn on him, saying, he wants to introduce taxes. And then the Tory media would spin a wealth tax as a way of, well, this is going to harm ordinary people. Now, of course, that would be a lie. And that's not an excuse for Sunak to not to talk honest with people. I think a better approach would be to be honest with the public and say, this is what we're going to do. But if it's about... See, there are two problems. One is politicians have a habit of not being honest. And the second is the right-wing media. Most of the media in Britain is right-wing. If you look at the Express, the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Times, the Telegraph, all of these are working against the people. So a wealth tax would help the people. So anyone who talks about a wealth tax is going to be punished by these newspapers. It doesn't matter if it's Keir Starmer, it doesn't matter about who it is. If I had some sort of major platform and I started talking about a wealth tax, I can guarantee you the Daily Mail will be attacking me. Because they're there to defend the richest in society. They're owners. So they don't want you talking about wealth taxes or redistribution or anything like that. So anyone who does will be cut down. So if you are running against the government, you're going to be cut down. Now, I hope, this is not something I believe, but I hope Starmer is not talking about these things because it's not politically convenient to talk about them now, but he will talk about them when he's in power. Now, this is a hope. It's also possible that he will be an austerity prime minister. But if I was giving him any advice, I would tell him, if you go down the road of austerity, you'll be out in your arse after one election, because the public want change. They want public services to be funded, and if you go down this road of cutting public services and using the excuse of the Tories, that will work for a while, but it won't work forever. Because people will not want excuses, they will want action. And if you just say, well, it's the Tories' fault, it's the Tories' fault, it's the Tories' fault, that will work for a while, but then people will say, okay, but what are you going to do about it? In the same way as the Tories keep saying what we're going to do in the future. No, what people want is action now. What do you do? Imagine a situation where a mother is looking for a dentist for her child who has a toothache. If you say, look, I'm going to take you to the dentist now. I'm going to call up a dentist and take you there now. That's very different to, well, don't worry, in 6 months' time, we're going to have a new dental surgery set up. That's no good to you. That's no good to the mother who has a child who has a toothache now. They need action now. So I understand what Starmer and the Labour Party are trying to do, and I understand that maybe they feel that there's no point in actually presenting policies because people will not be voting on those policies, to be voting against the Tories. So I think if you look at it through the prism of, are you voting for the Tories or against the Tories, it doesn't matter what Starmer says. But then if it doesn't matter what Starmer says, then wouldn't it be better he said something than saying nothing? I'm conflicted on how to respond to this. It's frustrating that he doesn't say something because you want him to say something positive. You want him to be the candidate of peace and hope, hope and change, sorry. But then on the other hand, if that's going to cost him the election and result in the Tories being back in power again, then it's pointless having hope and change if it's not going to be eventually delivered. Labour are not trying to do anything. They're doing the same, except not as offensively. Well, look, I'm on the fence on this because I don't know what they're actually going to do because they haven't been in power. So I think there's a problem with what we can do. When we predict what they're going to do, it's difficult because sometimes we compare with, well, what did Labour do when they were last in power? Well, they were very different to the Tories. But if you compare what Sunak and Starmer are talking about now, then yes, in many ways, Labour seem to be exactly the same. But if this is a tactic in order to win the election by just not talking, then of course you're going to appear like the Tories. But maybe that's what they understand is, well, if we act differently and the people are just interested in punishing the Tories, then we don't need to do anything. It's dishonest, it's horrible, but it seems to be the way politics is going. So if you want to win the election, just let the Tories crash and burn. Don't interrupt them. Because if I start talking about what I would do differently, then I'm going to interrupt them. Shouldn't be like that, but that seems to be the way it is. So guys, we're almost at the end of the day. Just want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on. I don't know, let's finish on a sort of high note. Maybe a high note. Boris Johnson, to me, feels like a bad dream. This is what James
Is
O'Brien
Boris
had to say.
Johnson a busted flush? Is Boris Johnson a soaking wet squib? Is Boris Johnson a flat balloon, a burst football? Toast. I really, really think he is. A constituency of people across the country who thought that Boris Johnson was somehow their man. I think that has withered. I could be wrong. It's not a personal preference. I mean, I think it might be useful to the Labour Party if Boris Johnson goes out campaigning for the Tory party. I don't know. But I think what I see when I read that the former Prime Minister is likely to be deployed in the north of England and the Midlands, I see a London-based Tory party saying to themselves that those thickos in the regions, those plebs in the provinces, they're still going to fall for Boris Johnson's shtick. Just pause for a moment and think about what this story says about Rishi Sunak.
Exactly. And this is the Tories think, let's send, Boris was popular in the north of England in the Red Wall, let's send in Boris once again. He might be able to win us back some support. And there will be some stupid people in the Red Wall who bought Boris Johnson's lies in 2019 and still think Boris would be, will still think wonderful things of Boris Johnson. But I think the vast majority who were lied to, who realise we're not actually getting levelled up, we're not getting Brexit done, would probably run Boris Johnson out of town. So when the Tories think, well, Boris Johnson won us an 80-seat majority, they seem to forget that was based on lies. You could win an 80-seat majority if you based all of your campaigning on lies. Boris Johnson, the biggest liar of them all, of course, those of us who know something about Boris Johnson were screaming at our phones, at our TVs, at our computers saying, no, don't vote for this guy. He's a liar. He's a charlatan. But people thought he would get Brexit done. People thought he would level up the north. It was all a lie, of course. The DUP, through their support, invited Boris Johnson to their party convention, to their conference, whatever it was. And Boris Johnson spoke at it and lied to them. And they cheered him on. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Boris Johnson is a compulsive, pathological liar. Why are you listening to him? It all started with the bendy bananas. Was that not enough of a giveaway? This is a guy who based his career on lies. When he was Mayor of London, lying. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When he became Foreign Secretary, lying. And then he became Prime Minister. And people still, well, let's give him a go. He'll shake things up. He's a bit rough around the edges. He's a bit like Trump. And now the Tories have such little respect for their own voters that they believe, well, let's send Boris Johnson up north again. Let's send him to the Red Wall. He'll be able to convince people to vote for us. What is he going to lie about this time? Don't worry, Red Wall, we will level you up if you vote for us again. Yeah, we did lie to you about Brexit, but if you vote for us again, we'll get Brexit done this time. Some people will be stupid enough, and that's nothing to do with the Red Wall, that's just people in general. Some people will be stupid enough to buy Boris Johnson's lies. But I think, if you have seen your town crumble, if you've seen shops shuttered, if you've seen unemployment go up, you've seen more and more crime, Boris Johnson arriving for the day isn't really going to turn things around. So guys, I want to say thank you so much once again for everyone who came on. Thanks for your support. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. A bit of a character, yes. A liar that didn't even die in a ditch. Yes, remember, there's so many lies. We need to write a book. I'm going to try and use ChatGPT to GPT, whatever you call it, to research Boris Johnson's lies, and we could write a book about his lies. So, guys, before we finish, we have our one for the road. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see. If I don't see you, well, I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. One for our road. Hope you enjoy this.
Welcome to Broken News. The Conservative Party is set to launch a new campaign to find future politicians. The move comes as practically all of their MPs have either said they won't stand at the next election, have already resigned, or are so corrupt they'd give Putin a raging stonk on. Assuming it still works, we're not sure if it does. Maybe he has a dick double, like he definitely has a double for everything else. We just don't know. Our reporter has more.
As yet another by-election looms, the Conservative Party has admitted it's running out of Conservative Party politicians to play the role of Conservative Party politicians. After giving 100% of its current elected party a go in at least one top job, supplies of Tory MPs are running lower than Rishi Sunak doing squat jogs. Now Broken News understands that party bosses are willing to look further afield by asking Reform Party politicians to become Conservative MPs before casting the net wider to EDL members, the National Front, and your weird Uncle Richard, who comes to every party dressed as Goebbels, even if it's not a fancy dress party. Tory leaders have also confirmed they'll be asking people outside every Betfred whether they fancy having a crack at being Home Secretary for a bit. And next year there'll be an opportunity to become Chancellor in a brand new primetime ITV talent show, The Exchequer Factor, which will be hosted by Anton Deck, obviously. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
Oh my goodness, the guy who dresses as Goebbels, even if it's not fancy dress. Oh my goodness. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. And as always, stay safe, take care, and good night.